Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Cinema Heroes. I'm Justin Speck.
Hey, Stu.
And today we're talking about All-Star Superman. Released in 2011, directed by Sam Liu, written by Dwayne McDuffie from a graphic novel by Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely, and starring James Denton, Christina Hendricks, Anthony LaPaglia, and she's not listed on the back, but I know Linda Cardellini is also a voice in this, and Arnold Vosloo, which was kind of cool to see. This was kind of interesting. I had bought the first couple of comics for this when it was released, and unfortunately never bought the whole run. But I remember kind of liking the art style and everything. So when this movie was released on I bought it originally on DVD. I didn't really know the story. I kind of was a little familiar with the beginning, but didn't know how it ended, obviously. And to be honest with you, I was blown away by it.
Yeah.
What was your? Do you remember watching it for the first time? What was your impression?
I do remember watching it for the first time. I got it from the library, like many other movies, and I was familiar with the story, like vaguely familiar with it. I knew of it, but I didn't know the details of it. And I was familiar with the art style because it was so unique.
Yeah.
Very old school.
Mhm.
Very kind of Fleischer like,
Yes.
which was intriguing. And after watching it, I was like, I think I just witnessed one of the greatest Superman movies ever made.
Yeah. It's up there with. It's one of my favorite DC animated movies. I think, this is kind of similar to Superman, Batman, Public Enemies, where they tried to recreate the art style of the graphic novel. They do the same thing
Yeah.
here. They're trying to kind of recreate the art of Frank Quitely, and they do a fantastic job. And it does have that kind of classic Superman feel to it. I don't love when Superman has like a short cape. I think Superman looks better when he's got the longer cape. But it
agree.
works in this movie. And he also, it's like his cape kind of comes around a little bit more. It kind of comes over his shoulders, which is unusual. It's more of a Batman thing, but
It looks
it's
more majestic when it comes over his shoulders. It kind
yeah,
of makes him look a little bit more royal or
right.
regal.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Um, but yeah, but I think it works for this movie. His cape is very short. It just kind of goes right below the red trunks, and then is kind of so. But again, it works for this, and that's kind of how classic Superman kind of was. I think he had the shorter cape. It didn't go all the way to his ankles like it does in like Zack Snyder's movies and stuff. Even Christopher Reeve's cape wasn't that long.
Right.
It was longer than this, but it wasn't Henry Cavill long, I guess you could say.
Yeah. I think Brandon Routh was still quite long.
It was, yeah. It went. I don't think it was quite as long as Henry Cavill. Like,
Just above the ground.
yeah, Zack Snyder kind of almost has Henry Cavill's almost like dragging the ground. And Brandon Routh's kind of went to, I want to say, like his ankles or his maybe kind of like his calves, which is a good length, I think, for a Superman cape.
For sure.
One of the things that I had kind of forgotten about this movie when watching it today was how just kind of comic booky it is, I guess you could say. Like, there's a lot of stuff in the movie that is I don't know how to describe it, but it's like the Sun Eater, in the fortress, and his cosmic hammer that he has, and how he creates suns to feed the Sun Eater, and kind of those type of elements that are in the story. Like, they don't bother trying to be grounded in reality in any sort of way. It's just very much comic booky is the only way I can really kind of think of the way to describe it. But it works really well, though.
For sure. It definitely works. They like many other DC animated films, it doesn't spoon feed you exposition. It expects you to already be familiar with the lore. Um some of which I was unfamiliar with uh watching this the first time, like the Sun Eater.
Right.
Most of which I knew what was up. I knew what was going on. But yeah, it doesn't waste any time with any exposition and fully embraces its fantastical
Yeah.
nature, which very much helps the movie. Because this I'm like you. I'm having a hard time picking a word to describe it.
Fantastical
Um,
was a good way to put it, because there
yeah,
that's you know, we've got the movie. I've got the movie on right here, watching it, kind of to, you know, help me remind me what to talk about and whatnot. And he just mentioned his time telescope. That's another element of the movie that was, you know, is very kind of fantastical and you know, just it's apparently a telescope that kind of lets him see into the future and talk to his future ancestors and stuff. And that's just what he's got in the fortress. You know, it's just one of those things. He also has I also forgot that, like, in this movie, his Fortress of Solitude kind of reminds me of the Batcave. Like, he's got a lot of trophies and a lot of you know, he's got an armory of weapons that he's confiscated from people over the years and things. And he's got several different robots that are helping him, you know, maintain the fortress and working on experiments and things like that, which I thought was really kind of interesting.
yeah, definitely. This version of Superman has been Superman for a long time. Definitely over a decade. He's been
Yeah, yeah.
Superman for a while. To have all of those trophies, and it's again, it's really fun. Because it includes all of these things from the DC and Superman lore, um, which we usually don't get to see in the live action movies.
It's very true.
And you know, although there's a lot happening in this movie, it never feels convoluted,
No.
and it never feels overly complex. The way I see it is it's a compilation of like many adventures,
Mhm.
just with the through line of you know, Superman being super.
Right.
And it's really well done. They really nail the core of you know, who Superman is and what he means to the world, and
Mhm.
you know, what he means to Lex Luthor, what, you know, why he's so obsessed, and why he has such a, you know, such a god complex. And it's just it's really well done.
Yeah,
Like, it's excellent.
I agree. Uh, Dwayne McDuffie, he passed away, and I forget when he passed away exactly, but I remember one of the movies I think has kind of a tribute to him on the special features, and a lot of the people were talking about how, you know, it was such a loss to not only the comic book industry but also, you know, the film industry, because he wrote a few of these animated movies, and I feel like the ones that he wrote are kind of the stronger ones. He was a really good writer who really
Yeah,
understood the
he's excellent.
material, but also really knew how to write a good movie. You know what I mean? And so, it's a shame that he passed away. But this is one when I saw, you know, when the movie, because there's no opening credits, and so when the movie ended and I saw his name in the credits, I thought, of course, you know, it's like,
Like, no wonder it's so
right,
good.
exactly. Um, and obviously, you know, some credit goes to Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely for the graphic novel, but Dwayne McDuffie, I know that there's elements in the novel that he had to take out, and he had to, you know, he had to shrink it down to fit the runtime of a 76-minute animated movie, and he did a fantastic job, because I don't think, you know, the only, when watching it today, the only stuff that I thought, do we need this, was when those and I don't remember their names, unfortunately, but the Kryptonians show up, and he's kind of, they're thinking they're gonna take over Earth, and you know, they call the humans apes. You know, they're very much, we're better than you type thing, and
Mhm.
Superman is trying to kind of plead with them to not be that way. That was the only part of the movie that I kind of was like, it didn't slow it down. I know I wasn't bored at all during those moments. Just I wasn't sure if it was necessary to like the plot. But I think it's what you were saying. It's kind of the whole movie is kind of these mini adventures of and just showing us who Superman is. And so when you think about it that way, it absolutely belongs because it shows how Superman is so much different than these Kryptonian characters and how Earth is his home. This is his family. Like, why would he sees himself, even though he is very much superior, you could say, he sees himself as an equal with humans. He doesn't see himself as being anything, as being better than anybody.
Yeah.
He is equal among them. He was given abilities to be able to help, you know? And that's one of the greatest things about Superman. Um,
For sure. For sure. I agree. Um and one of the interesting things about that is even though he sees himself as an equal, he still tries to keep part of his Kryptonian heritage alive.
right.
Like when he's having dinner with Lois, he comes in in with the Kryptonian like the
Right.
formal Kryptonian hood, and he's definitely he's very self-aware. I think this is the most like self-aware version of Superman we've seen. Like
Yeah.
he understands that he's both human and Kryptonian,
Right.
and tries to reconcile that without sacrificing who he is at his core, which I think they execute really really well in this movie. um One thing that I really like is the story, the through line of Superman is he's dying because he absorbed too much solar energy, and now his cells are exploding.
Mm-hmm.
And I think th- I think that's a very interesting way to present the death of Superman without without him actually he's dying, but he's still super,
Right. Yes.
which is it's I I admire whoever came up with that with that idea, because I remember when the All Star line was a thing. They were doing All Star Batman, All Star Superman. I think they did All Star Wonder Woman as well. Um, and I remember reading that they could do literally whatever they want, but they had to keep like certain uh
Characteristics.
pre-crisis.
Oh yeah.
I think it was pre-crisis. So like certain pre-crisis elements had to remain the same. Other than that, they could literally do whatever they wanted. Um, and so when Grant Morrison was writing this story, I would assume that he was a little kid in the Superman sandbox,
Yeah.
just trying to figure out what he could do, and like how can I tell a great Superman story and still have it be like emotional. It was
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, I'm gonna kill Superman, but Superman still has to be super, even though he's dying. And I just the way he did it was just it was brilliant. Like he's dying because he's too powerful.
Right. Yeah.
Um, I thought it was brilliant, and he's not letting that stop him from being super. He's not sulking in his sorrow. He understands that death is imminent, but he's still Superman, and he's gonna continue to be super until he can't.
Mm-hmm.
And it just the way the way they told that story, the way they presented that aspect of the character is just is brilliant.
Yeah, I agree, and what that's I didn't something I hadn't really thought about, but the way you mentioned how he's dying and he's not sulking about it, like that's a very good point. Like a normal person would find out they're dying and probably be depressed for a little while until they kind of accepted it. He kind of accepts it right away and is like, okay, there's some stuff I got to do, and the first thing he just does is decides to tell Lois that that he's Clark Kent actually. Um, and he also he develops that serum so that she can experience his powers for 24 hours. And I think one thing he hadn't thought of was that when he revealed his secret to Lois, she was a little bit upset at first because she's like, you're telling me the truth now, which means you've lied to me for however many years.
Yeah.
And he's like, to protect you, but she's like, you still lied to me. And so she's upset about it for a little bit. She kind of gets over it pretty quickly, but I really do actually kind of really admire that quality of Superman, who's like, okay, I'm dying. Well, there's nothing I can do about it, so I'm just gonna continue doing what I do, and I'm gonna let the people that I love know who I am and how I feel about them, and I'll keep being Superman until I die, and so
yeah.
it's it's really kind of amazing because any other character probably would be like trying to find a cure or or just being depressed, like I said. They would just be sulking and like or angry. They could have gone a different way and made a character angry, and I'm glad they didn't go that route with Superman. So yeah, it's a very, very cool character decision and writing decision to do it that way.
Definitely. That's part of what makes him super. Not just the superpowers, but that he has the the wherewithal to keep his composure and keep calm. That is just one of many things that separates him from the rest of us. He is the ultimate example of virtue, and it's just that is a common theme throughout the movie. It's just
Mm-hmm.
he is so virtuous,
Mm-hmm.
and you know uh doing the right thing for the sake of doing the right thing, um always remaining positive, and it's beautiful to watch, man. I just it's just really beautiful to watch.
Yeah.
Going back to Lois, um, I love the fact that when he reveals that he's Clark Kent, she already knew pretty much. She just couldn't prove it.
Mm.
And I I said this when we would I forgot what we were discussing, but we were talking about Superman and Man of Steel for one of the episodes, and I said I've always I've always admired um Zack Snyder for making the decision to have Lois know straight from the gate, because the way Lois is written, that is so logical and pragmatic. Lois is an incredibly intelligent human being. There's no way that she would not be able to deduce that Superman is Clark Kent. There is
Right.
absolutely no way
Right.
a person that intelligent would be that stupid. And
Right.
I love the fact that they address it in that short scene. Like, she said that I've spent all this time trying to prove that you were Superman. I just couldn't. So I love the fact that she always knew,
Yeah.
but didn't say anything because she couldn't prove it. I
Right.
thought that was brilliant. But she was, like you said, she was upset because she'd been lied to all these years. With it was understandably so.
Right. And she asks him
the-
about like she was like, what about that time when Clark did something like gave you like presented you with something, or he was like Batman was standing in for me,
man.
and then he said something else. She was like, well, what about the time when blah blah blah, and he was like, it was a robot. It was just like, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I remember in the Return of Superman comic, they have to explain where Clark Kent has been. Superman was dead, and they have to kind of explain where Clark Kent was. And so there's a scene at the end of in the end of that comic where Superman like pulls Clark out of some rubble. And so they they even get their picture taken together, I think. And it's funny because Clark had been in the rubble for so long, he's got, he doesn't have a full beard, but he's got the long hair that Superman now has as well. But you find out it was Supergirl, because in that in the 90s, Supergirl was like a shape-shifting alien. And so she could take the shape of other people, and so she was kind of the stand-in for Clark in that moment. But I like how they kind of do that type of thing. I agree. In the real world, I guess you could say Lois would definitely know. She would be able to figure out very quickly. But
She's
I do
a
like
Pulitzer Prize winning
right.
journalist.
But I do like how
way that she wouldn't figure it out.
Right. But I do like how some of the movies have handled it in the past. Like I love that scene in Superman Returns where it's actually, and again, she would have put it together quicker, but it's James Marsden character. It's like, how tall is Superman? And how much do you think he weighs? And then he's like, how tall would you say Clark is? And Clark obviously is hearing it. And so then he just kind of like acts all goofy and dumb, and, and they laugh it off. They're like, of course, what were we thinking? And I always kind of appreciated that scene, kind of, but, and I do like in this movie that they bring back the bumbling, clumsy Clark Kent. Because that's one of the things, it's even more difficult to suspend your disbelief that people don't know who Superman is when Clark Kent is the exact same as Superman. It's as much as I love the Superman and Lois show, like Clark and Superman are the exact same dude. And same
with Henry Cavill.
Yeah, Henry Cavill, exactly. Yeah. There's no difference.
Watching
other than his hair.
Yeah, watching Henry Cavill be Clark Kent in the Daily Planet, like it's like, bro, just the way you carry us, you are so Superman. Like, how do people not know that you're Superman?
Right. They should have put a scene in there where Perry's like, "Listen to me, Clark."
And I like to think that in the Snyderverse that
Perry does know.
The people, Perry does know. The entire town of Smallville knows.
Right.
It's just that but they choose not to say anything because it's Superman.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I kind of agree. I've always, in my head canon, even though Perry does yell at him quite a bit in Batman vs Superman, in my head canon, I kind of always assumed that Perry knew who he was, because he's also a very intelligent person and has probably been, a reporter for decades and can put two and two together, kind of.
He was at Clark's house when he died in BVS.
Right,
There's no way he didn't know.
Yeah, that's very true. It's a good point. Good point. If there was an award for voice direction or casting, give Andrea Romano all of the awards, because this movie in particular was casted perfectly. Oh my God.
James Denton as Superman. Oh my God. And Anthony LaPaglia, like,
he might be my favorite animated Lex Luthor. Like, he's so good.
He's so good.
He's got such a great voice, and it works so well for Lex Luthor.
Mm-hmm.
And James Denton, I forgot how good James Denton was as Superman / Clark Kent. And then Christina Hendricks is also really good as Lois Lane, I
As
thought.
Lois, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody is fantastic. And Ed Asner as Perry White.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Classic. He was
Classic.
Jay Jonah in the old 90s Spider-Man cartoon.
Man.
So he
He was Granny Goodness
yeah.
in the Superman
Justice League.
animated
Yeah,
series.
yeah. Or Superman, yeah. And yeah. So and then of course, Arnold Vosloo plays that Kryptonian character whose name I forget, who it's like Bar-El or something like that.
I forget his name.
He was really good.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just the casting was on point for this film for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But going back to Lex, this is one of the best versions of Lex Luthor.
Yes.
Um, I love, I love. Obviously, he's obsessed with Superman, but the way Lex is written in this movie is fantastic because he spends most of the movie playing it very cool.
Mm-hmm.
He's very arrogant. He's literally on death row,
Yeah.
and he's like, it's all good. Everything is cool. Like I'm not worried. Um, because jumping ahead to the end, he has you know uh found a way to give himself superpowers right before he gets executed.
Right.
Um, which I thought was brilliant again. And what I love about that the most is that because he is endowed with all the powers of Superman, um, and because Superman has somehow warped uh his perception of time. He's kind of like warped
Right.
relativity for him.
Yeah.
Um, he can now see things how Superman sees them, and it was eye opening for him.
Right.
And he like in that moment, he was like, "Yeah, like I can literally save the world." And by the time he figures it out, he loses his powers because his time is sped up, and he genuinely feels guilty
Mhm.
for all the stuff that he's done because he finally gets it now. And that is probably my favorite part of the movie, other than the Superman stuff.
Yeah.
Lex Luthor's
Arc.
arc over, obviously in the movie, but I like to think that it's like over the course of the entire DC EU, or not DC, the DC
Animated.
universe.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah. Um. So like, if I were to make uh a cinematic universe of DC movies, this I would make this a live action movie.
Yeah.
I would cut some things out, make it a little bit less of a Adventures of Superman type story, and have a little bit more of a through line. But the way Superman is represented, the way the character arcs are handled with both Superman and Lex, it is the perfect end to the Superman story.
Yes, it is.
Perfect.
Yeah. And like you said, and I love that, at the end of the film, Lex Luthor is like a Superman fan, and he's
Yeah.
writing down, what Superman did, and he's got like a Superman journal, that he
Yeah.
gives I forget who he gives,
He
but
wrote down his genetic code
yeah.
so they could make another Superman.
Right. Yeah,
It's
that's right.
like this is his genetic code, but you need a woman to make it work. So
Right, that's right. He gives it to Dr. Quintum or whatever it is, he's
hmm
the one that's like flying the manned mission to the sun in the beginning of the movie that Superman has to
hmm
come save, and actually, it was Lex Luthor's plot. He knew that Superman would come save them, and he knew he would get too close to the sun and it would affect his cells, and so yeah, it's a really great Superman story. It's also a really great Lex Luthor story.
For sure.
The scene that I'm on right now is the prison scene where Parasite gets out. What did you think about Parasite and the design of Parasite and all that?
I wasn't huge on the design of Parasite, but in the context of this movie, I get it. He's been in there for a while and he hasn't absorbed much energy, so he would look a little weird. But the scene itself was great. I love the scene.
Yes, I agree. I'm not huge on the design either. It's interesting, and I can appreciate that it's different, but it is kind of a weird design. But I love the scene as well. I think the whole scene works really, really well. And like Clark is trying to do things without giving away that he's Superman, like
Yeah.
he slams his foot on the ground and he's like, earthquake.
Yeah. The funniest part of that scene was when they threw those bombs, those gas bombs, and he started coughing, and Lex Luthor said, "It's tear gas, you idiot." It just goes to show that Superman, as smart as he is, he's invincible, so he wouldn't
right.
wouldn't have been able to tell the difference. I mean, he can tell the difference, but in that moment, his only focus was getting people to safety and without outing himself.
Right.
What did you think of Samson and Atlas? Those their characters, that whole segment in the movie.
So I kind of like that segment. The only thing that I thought was kind of weird about that was the fact that Lois was she was almost enjoying making Superman mad. So she was flirting with them pretty obviously, and he was like, "What are you doing?" And that was like the one time where we were talking about how it came to mind when we were talking about how like Superman was accepting his fate and how he could have been could have had an angry reaction to knowing he was dying, and but he didn't. But I was like, that's the one time where we kind of almost see him angry in the movie is when Lois is like, "It's my birthday, and maybe I want you to fight for me," and she starts kind of just hanging on the arm of Atlas or something, and he's like, he almost gets kind of pissed off.
Yeah, understandably so. But I mean, she did say, that this is for lying to me for years.
Right. Yeah.
You're Superman. You can handle it.
Right. And one of the things about the fact that he flew too close to the sun and his cells kind of absorbing all that radiation is he is actually stronger now. He is more super. And so he ends up arm wrestling both of them. And he's just like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Have you guys started?" And then just like slams both their arms down, which is pretty good. And I also, it's interesting because they come from the future. And so they know that he's dying because that's one of the things that Samson, I think, says to him is, I forget how he words it, but basically he's saying like, she's going to be available pretty soon, and I don't think he appreciated that much. So
no, not at all.
Yeah. I kind of wish. So one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when they're at the Daily Planet. And I think it's when Lex starts kind of attacking with his powers. And he reminds Lois, he's like, "Remember, Lois," he's like, "I'm Clark Kent," or something. But he does the shirt rip opening and we see the S. He's near Perry and Lombard and Jimmy Olsen. And so I kind of wish we had gotten their reactions to that. I kind of wish, because it's cool that he reveals himself to Lois, but I think it would have been even cooler to see Perry White and Jimmy Olsen being like, "What?"
Right. Yeah.
I think that would have been kind of nice.
Yeah. He just opens his shirt up and Steve Lombard is like, hold on, mate. What the hell? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, wait, I'm sorry. I've been lighting your, he lights his jacket on fire. He's like, I've been pranking Superman this entire time. Yeah, I think just because also, Jimmy Olsen is very close to Superman. He's also close to Clark. And so and Perry White, I think it would have been interesting to see how they reacted to finding out that they're one and the same. Unless you could go with the idea that Perry probably already knew, but I don't think he did. This movie doesn't make it seem like he did.
No.
I also, one of my other favorite scenes is when Superman goes to visit his father's grave and his mom shows up. And his mom immediately knows. She's like, you look skinny. Are you sick? She like knows something's kind of up. And he's like, I'm fine, Mom."
Mother's instinct.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I thought that was a nice touch,
Yeah. I know that was a really nice scene. It was a small scene, but it was that's honestly one of the most like iconic Superman panels.
Mhm.
Is him in front of his father's grave. Again, it just goes back to the things that make Superman super without actually showing the abilities and the superpowers. He comes from such humble, ordinary beginnings, but he's just this extraordinary man.
Yeah.
And even without the powers, I he would still be Superman.
Mhm.
Like I said, he is the ultimate example of virtue, and his virtue is what makes him super.
Yeah. What did you think about the music in the movie? Christopher
I knew you were
Drake.
gonna ask me that.
Christopher Drake.
Christopher Drake did a great
Yeah.
job.
I
Like
am.
from the beginning, like when the
Yes.
movie started, I was like, yeah, this is it.
I know. Exactly. It's like before we even see a frame of animation. We see like because back then I guess this was Warner Premiere, but we see the Warner Premiere logo, we see the DC Comics logo, and the music that plays over those logos. I was like, I already want the soundtrack. And unfortunately, as far as I can tell, it was never released. It's not on iTunes, and I can't find a physical release. At least not that, like I said, not that I can find. So if it was released, I missed it, and it's not out there now. But it should have been because it's a really good score.
Yeah, it's excellent. It's excellent. I think as far as like the Christopher Drake animated ones go, I think my favorite might be Good Night
Returns,
Returns.
yeah, he
Yeah.
did a great job with that too.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I wish I could listen to this one more because it might be a tie between this and Dark Knight Returns. So yeah, I don't know, but yeah, both of them have a really good score. We haven't talked about that one yet, Dark Knight Returns. We need to definitely. We'll get to that one, of course, but
We'll get to that one. We got a few Batman ones coming up.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, there's a lot of Batman ones.
Yeah, we got like 2 or 3 Batman episodes coming up. As far as the animated episodes,
Yeah.
they'll be like back to back to back.
Right. Something I was gonna say. Oh, nothing important. I was just gonna say, watching this movie makes me want to order the graphic novel and give it a read because like I said, I still haven't never read the whole thing. I've only read those first issues, and I think I got to like him giving Lois superpowers, and that was about as far as I got. So I don't know if that was like the first 2 issues or the first 3 issues or something, but it wasn't very far. So I would like to read the whole thing and see. I'm sure it's just as good as this, if not better, because of stuff they probably had to cut out and whatnot. I don't know. But I'd like to give it a read.
No, same. I definitely want to give it a read. If the movie's this good, I can only imagine how good the source material is. So
Right, exactly.
I'm with you.
Why do you think Jimmy Olsen's wearing a dress in the beginning of the film?
Uh, I don't know because Steve Lombard asked him, he's like, "You undercover or something? You work in the store?" He's like, "No, why?"
Yeah, no, why? I mean, it could have just been a
I
joke,
don't
but
know.
yeah, it was kind of funny. And then later on, he's wearing like a Kryptonian shorts over his pants or something, and he's like, yeah, it's like the fashion now. Kryptonian fashion is like the in thing. It was kind of weird, but it
I
was
don't know.
funny.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird. Maybe he was brainwashed by Mr. Mixlick Pick.
Mixelpidlick,
Yeah,
Mixelpidlick or something like that. Yeah,
yeah, him.
him. Yeah,
Yeah, this movie. I mean, it's nearly perfect. Like I said, I don't think this would translate well to live action because it is so comic booky.
right.
But as an animated film, it's nearly perfect. This is one of the best Superman stories, in my opinion, that has ever been told.
Yes. Yeah, no, I agree. I thought the exact same thing today when I was watching. I was like, because part of me thinks this would be awesome to see live action, but at the same time, they would have to make some changes. Like, when he gives Lois superpowers, they fly back to Metropolis, and Metropolis has been it's because Samson and Atlas kind of caused it, but like the lizard people from the Earth's core have come out,
Yeah.
and you're like, what? So
Yeah, that
like
would
that would
be
not work.
nah, not at
Um,
all. So I would like if I were to adapt it, I would cut out Samson and Atlas. I would cut out the Kryptonians. Um, and I would I would give Lex Luthor a bigger, more story.
yeah,
So there would be more prison scenes, and there would be more of Lois and Clark
hmm
investigating the investigating the mission to the sun,
right.
and why exactly it went wrong, and things like that. So, and I'd probably also find a way to link Parasite to that somehow.
Yeah, I was thinking if this was let's say part three of a trilogy or something, I would leave the Parasite scene in because you could have had Parasite as a villain in one of the earlier films, especially, and so this could be kind of he comes back, and maybe it's been a while, like you said, been in prison for a while and stuff like that. But yeah, that's probably what I would do too if I was to kind of convert it to live action. That was another thing that was very comic booky right in the beginning. The man mission to the sun. One of the crew members, who I guess was engineered by Dr. Quintum or whatever his name was, like suddenly just becomes this giant kind of crazy looking monster with these, it's like these, I don't know what were coming out of his back, but they almost look like
Yeah,
syringes or something, It was like,
yeah,
it was a weird thing. And then this is one moment where I thought I liked it at first, but then when Superman shows up, I was like, it's almost not a plot hole, but it almost was kind of inconsistent, I guess you could say, where we cut to Lex Luthor and we see that he's controlling this creature on the spaceship, but because he's on Earth, it takes 9 minutes for his movements and messages to get there,
uh-huh.
which I thought was interesting. So he's saying these things and moving, and 9 minutes later they're getting it on the spaceship. But then Superman shows up at the window, and the creature turns and just jumps towards Superman. So I was like, Lex Luthor would have had to know that in 9 minutes exactly, Superman was going to show up at that window, and he was going to jump towards Superman. Which they make Lex Luthor smart enough in the film,
Yeah,
but
I was
it's
gonna say that. While it is probably very much oversight,
yeah,
I could see Lex Luthor being that calculating that he knows he could predict Superman's actions.
right,
Because like we said earlier, Superman has been Superman for quite some time at the beginning of this movie, and obviously at the end of his Superman career. So I
Yeah.
would think that both Superman and Lex Luthor know each other very well.
I was gonna say, and Lex has pretty much made it his life's mission to, you know, well, to kill Superman, but to also just study him and know exactly what he's gonna do and everything. So yeah, I guess it's just, I mean, Superman could have flown to the front like windshield. But he went to that porthole window instead.
Mhm.
So it's just, it was a, maybe there was. I wish they had maybe explained that one just a tiny bit better, like how he knew he was going to go to that exact window. I don't know, but they don't.
Maybe the thing was just instinctive.
It could be, yeah, could be.
Yeah.
He took a risk, He turned that way and then jumped, and he could have. Superman could have been somewhere else, but he just figured, from the where he was flying, that would be the most logical choice to come to the window or something. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, Lex Luthor probably figured out. He probably thought of every single scenario, and he probably even took steps to eliminate the other scenarios, so that way Superman had to fly to that. Who knows? I mean, I can accept it.
I mean, he's fought Superman hundreds of times.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
would assume, so
it's one of those things that it's not enough for me to like subtract the points off the movie. It's just, it was something that I kind of noticed watching it this time around, that I was like, well, if it takes 9 minutes, then he would have had to know that Superman was going to be right there, blah, 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 blah.
Also, I love the white Superman suit.
Yes.
Minus the helmet.
But he had to have the helmet.
Other than that,
yeah,
he had to have that. But other than that, I really like it.
Right.
I would love to see Superman in a white suit.
Yeah.
At least like like in his last movie, maybe they do like 3 or 5 Superman movies, and then in the last one he has a white suit in the third act. Like that would be.
And how you could do it without the helmet is kind of similar to like Man of Steel, where they had that almost like a force field around their faces. You remember how like Zod kind of pulls on that? That's how you do it. You have him in the white suit, and he's just got like a force field helmet that kind of, you see it at first and then maybe disappears, but it's there, type of thing.
Right. Yeah, I'd do that.
That would be pretty cool. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. We almost forgot about that sun that shows up, Solaris, right?
Solaris, yeah.
Yeah. And it turns the sun red. It was, again, made a deal with Lex Luthor, but then actually ends up betraying. I don't know if betray is the right word, but he ends up poisoning our sun and turning it blue. And I love the moment with Superman where he actually brings the Sun Eater to come fight Solaris.
Yeah.
But then Solaris kills it, and he's like, Superman is, because I mean it was like his pet.
Yeah.
Superman was so upset.
He goes off on Solaris.
Yeah. But yeah, the white suit was really cool, and it's kind of got like a very classic. It's not the diamond shape; it's a different kind of shape on the chest. I'm actually looking at it right now.
Yeah.
But it's a very kind of classic, old school feeling Superman S on the chest.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really cool looking suit for sure.
It is.
That would be kind of a neat costume to see live action. And the reason for that suit, obviously, is because Lex Luthor turned the sun red. The serum does not affect, or the red sun does not affect people who have taken the serum, like he gave to Lois in the beginning of the movie, but it would affect Superman. And so he's wearing this white suit to shield him from the red sun in order to preserve his powers for, to save the day.
Right. It doesn't affect Kryptonian. It doesn't affect humans. It affects Kryptonians.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Stu, I'll go first this time. I always kind of make you go first, so I'll go first with the ratings today. I think you said it pretty well earlier. This is a near perfect Superman movie. Even though it is very fantastical and comic booky and has kind of these weird, like the lizard people from the Earth's core and stuff like that. I can't help but, to me, I mean, I can't help but give this movie 5 stars. I mean, the way, and it, watching it today, like when those Kryptonians showed up and stuff, I kind of remember thinking like, do we really need this? But once it gets to the end of the movie, with the music and the voiceover from Christina Hendricks and everything, it's just, oh my gosh, so good. And you see the statue of Superman and everything. It's so good. Yeah, this, to me, it's a 5-star movie.
I'm with you when you're right. 5 out of 5.
Yep.
5 out of 5. I don't know. Sun Eaters.
Right.
It is excellent. I was very excited to watch this movie. Very excited to do this episode. Like we said before, it's a nearly perfect Superman story.
Yeah.
And it is so well executed and very representative of why we love Superman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
It's excellent.
Yeah, if any of you out there, I mean, I don't know why you'd be listening to this if you haven't watched All-Star Superman, but if you haven't watched All-Star Superman yet, give it a watch, even though we spoiled the entire thing for you already. Give it a watch. It's well worth watching.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Well, we'd love to know what you think about All-Star Superman. I'm assuming you've seen it. You can always let us know at cinemaheroes.com. You can tweet at us or comment on our Instagram. Both handles are at cinemaheroes. If you're watching this on YouTube, comment below what you think about the movie, and give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. But yeah, we'd love to hear from you, however you want to reach out to us. I think that about wraps it up for this episode, though. I'm Justin Speck.
Jay Stu.
As always, thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing.